Hello and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I am Joe Rockey here with Father Boniface Hicks. And one of the things that we try to get across on this podcast is how to implement actions into your life. And we focus primarily upon the relationship that you have with yourself, the relationship that you share with others, all underneath the umbrella of the relationship that you share with God. And for many people out there, it's thought to be a passive game where there is not action steps to go and create a relationship with God. And for a lot of us, some of us are using that as because the steps I would have to do are scary or awkward or feel uncomfortable. So I just want to pretend like they don't exist. And Father, I'm going to hit upon one of the ones that are my personal challenges because I suspect that I'm not the only person who has this scenario. And that is actually in direct relationship to your latest book is I'm one of these people that doesn't like to have silence. Basically, there's always something going on, whether it be inside my mind, trying to think of a solution, or listening to a book or a podcast, or falling asleep with the TV on. There's essentially always some form of noise going on inside of my head. Yet, when in the state of prayer, that's not the case. And it does feel weird sometimes. It does feel different. And it's a life skill to be able to figure out how to overcome that. It's something that I went through. And I want to sit upon this because, as I'm sure you emphasize in your book, having silence is really, at least what I found, the best way to actually be able to listen to God. So I wanted to bring that up as the starting point of this episode because I don't think that I'm unique in this department.
Yes, well, as I talk about in my book, which is focused particularly on silence in the Mass, and it's always interesting. I've gotten enough feedback now that anybody who sees the title then thinks about times that are absolutely silent. We tend to initially use that word silence, thinking of absolute external silence, which then we have to tease apart a little bit. If the air conditioning is on, is that silence? If there's a baby screaming in the other room, or even just making little playing noises in the other room, is that silence? If we're out in nature and there are all of the sounds that you might have in a white noise machine, birds chirping and the wind rustling through the leaves, is that silence? What are we talking about with silence? And what's the silence that you have a hard time adding into your life or creating in your life? And what's the purpose of any of that? If at the same time that we're in a completely silent room with the doors closed and sound barriers on the walls so that it is absolutely silent, and my interior is going crazy because I've got 15 things to do. I'm feeling threatened on every side. I'm highly anxious and restless and don't know what to do with myself. Is that silence? So what are we talking about when we talk about silence? I'm actually going to put that question back to you, Joe, and see what your thoughts are. What are you actually looking for? What do you feel like there is not enough of in your life? And what's your experience of these things, and why would you want more of them? And then I'm happy, of course, to share my own thoughts on any of those things.
So and I certainly don't want to make it seem like this process is complete. But I think that I substituted silence, and maybe this is the direction you're going with this. Maybe I'm just wrong. I think I substitute the word silence with focus. I guess that's the right word, or not being distracted, which probably is the same thing. Um, so that's how I look at it, with silence, and that just being the sense being hearing that I associate it with. So that's really what I want to try to say is that there's not something pulling at me, not something that, oh, I need to go solve this problem, or I need to figure out this, that, or the other. It's, I can have a spot where I'm not doing anything, nor am I trying to think of a solution. So that's what I mean by silence. And you are right, to a certain degree. There's no such thing as absolute silence. Because even people who can't hear anymore, to them, without their hearing aid being turned on, it might be absolute silence. Well, that doesn't mean that the world around you isn't making noise. Just as when a 2-year-old puts his hands over his eyes playing peekaboo, he doesn't become invisible and the rest of the world doesn't disappear. We learn that as we grow up. So that is how I would approach the answer in looking at all of that from a logical standpoint.
Yes, we're really looking for interior peace. Is that a fair
Yeah, that's probably the way
summary?
better way of getting to what I was trying to describe.
And and then it's not wrong. I mean, we can see how some of these things fit together. There is something about limiting the external stimulation, but that's not just audio stimulation, that's also visual stimulation. And it's limiting. We can take some steps forward. Our internal stimulation, our internal restlessness is exacerbated by external stimulation. And so slowing some things down outside of us can certainly help to slow some things down inside of us. And that's very worthwhile. But as I say, just because you're not making any noise, if you're furiously text messaging 100 different people, like that's not more peaceful. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not really reducing stimulation. That's noisy. It's loud. And we use even those words sometimes, even though there's literally no sound coming from it. So that's the thing to pay attention to is can I limit external stimulation, and something to go with that is around multitasking. So even to focus on one sense at a time is quite something. Just to look at something, actually look at it, just to sit and rest, close your eyes and just listen to your surroundings. These are some ways that can slow things down internally, and if when you do that you become aware of some restlessness, well, then just having a little curiosity around that. What is that restlessness? What am I so disturbed by? A lot of times we'll get in touch with things like, gosh, I'm still reeling from the fact that I ran a red light this morning. This isn't really true. I haven't driven this morning, but lest our listeners are concerned. But we might discover, wow, I did something 3 hours ago. And when I stop the stimulation, I'm brought right back to that moment. Like, oh, wow, well, that was really significant. And maybe that was really scary. And, you realize that you could have died, or, you could have killed somebody or something. And even though you didn't, and the problem was averted and you moved on, well, it's still going on inside of you. And then you layer two or three other things on top of that, and you start having to peel back some of the layers of what's going on inside of you at any given moment. And if we continue to stimulate ourselves, we, from the outside, visual images and audio images and more work, tasks, thinking, focus, then we don't ever get in touch with what some of those deeper things might be going on inside of us. And we can see why we might want to do that, because those can be hard things to deal with. And so we find more ways to distract ourselves. And we distract ourselves even with good things. But it's a way of avoiding those deeper questions, those deeper fears, those deeper pains, those deeper uh, memories that we might be holding on to. So just slowing some things down. And, that's generally what happens in our churches as we go in, and hopefully in a beautiful context. Beauty has a way of, beauty is based around order, proportion, harmony. And when we sit in the midst of a beautiful church, I'm just visualizing our basilica here at St. Vincent, where I will be going in just a few moments. And how beautiful it is to walk in, and all the pews, stained glass windows, and big open space, and yet it's quiet. There isn't audio noise. The visual is not thrusting itself at me, so there is quite a bit to look at, but it doesn't force me to look at it. So I can peacefully look at one window, or I can just sit and close my eyes in a pew, and then again, it helps me to get in touch with what's happening in my heart, where there's maybe some residual pain, some question, some desire, some disappointment, some dream, something going on inside of me. And I can get in touch with that. And if I can become aware of God also being in that space with me, I can relate that to him, and I can start to bring some order to some of the chaos, the busyness, the multiple moving parts in my heart. And that's the path to peace. Peace is not lack of things, but it's the tranquility of order. It's putting order to things. And we can be at peace even when there are many challenges, and maybe a lot of things to do and difficulties that we're dealing with, and yet we can be at peace because it's ordered. It's not out of control inside of me. I know what it is, and it's in its right place, and it's in proportion to other things. And so that's good work. It really is. It's work. It does benefit from finding a place apart, reducing all of the external stimulation, and then starting to get in touch with what's moving in our hearts.
Yes, and that's something that can be incredibly challenging. And for all of us, we're constantly being pulled into a state of new stimulation. It's in a very real way, it's the challenge of the current world, is how do we not get pulled in the direction that either a company or individual is trying to pull us. And there's a lot of physical things that we can do to help put ourselves into a state of peace, which is what you've just described here, Father. Some of them are weird and scary. Things like turning off your phone, things like actually getting the appropriate amount of sleep. But when we do this, they do radically improve our lives. So today's episode is going to be a little bit shorter, but we do thank everyone for listening with us. Please do click share. If you have not done so already, please leave a review on whichever platform you are on. It is making a huge difference when you do that. And if you've already done one but didn't do a written review, that helps immensely as well. So we thank you all for being with us, and we will be with you again next week.